It's just calling the whole thing off is so scary politically. Because if you were a guy like Joe Biden that said, I'm going to legalize all drugs, you know, people would fucking turn on you. They'd freak the fuck out.
Yeah, getting the political will up to do it is something. But I mean, you even see it even with this. You know, we got like 100,000 ODs a year now, and so much of it is driven by the fact that people are getting fentanyl in shit that they don't even know that's not supposed to have fentanyl in it because it's in black markets. And Joe Biden is absolutely. I mean, it's hard to like hate him so much now because he's so old and senile. It's hard to even hold him responsible. But his career, he was like probably the worst person on this issue. Joe Biden, since the 80s, was pushing ramp ups in the war on drugs. He challenged Ronald Reagan from the right, partnered up with Strom Thurmond, and was criticizing Reagan for being too soft on drugs. And then he was the one who authored the crime bill that Bill Clinton signed into law. Yeah. He's got a lot of death and destruction on his old hands.
Yeah, that crime bill. Oof. The whole just war on drugs thing is such a strange issue because logically everyone knows that when you legalize things, and certainly when you decriminalize things, you get a giant drop in violent crime. You get a giant drop in addiction. It's so counterintuitive, but people are so terrified because drugs have been so devastating. Like because I think that if we did legalize all drugs and it happened quickly, you're going to have more overdoses. You're going to have more deaths. You're going to have more addicts. You're just going to because there's going to be more access.
Yeah, but
when
you know,
when does it balance out?
Well, I don't know. I think there will be more access for sure, but I think so many of the overdoses now are because people become addicted to pain pills or become addicted to heroin and get fentanyl in it, and you wouldn't have that if drugs were legal. So you would have stuff like there's not a problem with people smoking cigarettes and finding out there was fentanyl in their cigarettes. You know what I mean? Because it's not. But there would be or there could be if it was on a black market and you were just getting it from some gang member. You know?
Yeah.
So it would reduce. I think it would reduce overdoses in that sense. There's no question it's a trade-off. There's no good, perfect solution where there's not any costs. But the major benefit would be you would eliminate like the gang violence. And already even I think when they I don't have this like numbers right at the top of my head on the front of my head, but the weed trade from Mexico, that used to be the big thing, and I think that's all but gone now.
Not
because
necessarily it's not apparently because there's so many states where marijuana is still illegal,
right?
Most of the illegal weed is actually being grown on state land by the cartels.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a guy named John Norris. He wrote a book called Hidden War, and he came on the podcast to discuss it. He actually was a game warden and, you know, wanted to have a job like, you know, checking fishing licenses and stuff, doing game warden stuff. And he detailed it in the book how they found this creek that had been diverted and dried up, and they were trying to they thought maybe a farmer had done this or something, some obstruction, and they traced it to this grow-op that was in the middle of the forest. And his unit became like a tactical unit because they were having gunfights with cartel members. Instead of it being like game warden, now it became like a DEA type situation,
right?
Where you're running into these public land grow-ops where these guys, they take this area and they level it and they grow weed there, and these guys were camping there, and you know, they had guns, and it's wild shit, man. It's the whole book is incredible, and the stories.
That's very interesting.
So that's 90%, he was saying, of all the illegal marijuana that's being sold in America is coming out of these places. Yeah.
Yeah. This is why I think you just got to call the whole thing off at a certain point. It's been a failure. I mean, we've been doing it for 40-something years.
Yeah.
Or something. I mean, it's like. Or maybe more than that. Is it 50 years now?
Yeah, I think it's 1970.
72 or something like that. It started, you know?
50 plus years.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, okay, so we fought a war and the drugs won. And now it's time to, just like with the Taliban, it's time to accept.
They keep winning. Like they're winning and they're killing us. Yeah. It's destroying our country. And it's not the legal ones. It's the illegal ones. And the reason why it's destroying it is because they're illegal. Yeah. So it's also propping up the cartels. It's like... They just you could walk right over there. People walk over here, walk right over there, and you have literally one of the scariest results of drug prohibition right there, where you have insane crime and insane resources that the cartels have. They control the government. They control cities.
Yep.
It's wild shit, and it's all because of our policies.
And it's interesting that we got the guy in the White House who was the champion of it for those entire 50 years. I mean, maybe he wasn't in the whole 50 years, but he was in for like 40 plus of them.
Yeah.
And he was the great champion of it. And